Okay, let's dive right in. Male privilege in India, 2025. Is it real? Or is it, as some argue, a myth?
It's definitely one of the most charged questions out there today, isn't it?
Absolutely. Sparks immediate reactions. You hear one side talking about these invisible structures holding women back.
And then the counter argument that this idea of privilege is just silencing men's very real struggles.
Right. But maybe it's not so black and white. Could both things be true, maybe depending on, say, where you are in Bengaluru, your family background, what you're facing right now?
That tension itself is revealing, I think. It makes us confront what we think we know. Like Socrates said, knowing you know nothing is the start, right?
Okay, so let's try a quick thought experiment. Imagine just for 24 hours you swap genders here in India.
Okay, I'm listening.
So, woman becomes a man. Maybe there's that initial feeling being heard a bit more easily, a subtle shift in how people react.
Possibly. A slight deference, maybe.
But then, almost immediately, the weight, the expectation, provider, protector, emotionally contained.
The mard ko dard nahi hota pressure.
Exactly. Now, flip it. A man becomes a woman. Think about just walking home alone after dark in Delhi. Yeah. Or Mumbai.
That constant low hum of alertness,
Yeah.
calculation.
That feeling. Is it just fear, or is it rooted in something systemic? Does that one experience complicate the simple privilege narrative?
It definitely shows the nature of advantage and disadvantage is complex, not a simple on-off switch.
Which brings us to how privilege works. Is it always obvious, or is it sometimes quieter, like woven into the background?
Like Jung's shadow concept, maybe. Things we don't consciously acknowledge, but that shape things anyway. Societal defaults.
Could be. I saw something striking recently. Graham boardroom. Sharp woman, great ideas. Talked over, interrupted. Later, a male colleague basically repeated her point and got the nods.
Familiar story, unfortunately.
But then, same day, scrolling social media, saw posts from young guys, Tier 2, Tier 3 cities, unemployed, facing that deep family shame.
Stark contrast, two different kinds of struggle within the same system.
So is privilege this one single story? Or is it messier?
It points to the bigger picture, doesn't it? Urban India, you see incredible progress for women. Tech, startups, academia. We celebrate that.
We absolutely should. Lots of online empowerment narratives, too.
But then you look at the gender pay gap, still there. Domestic violence stats, chilling.
And parliament. Boardrooms. Land ownership. Still heavily skewed.
Right. So is the visible progress the whole story? Or just a layer on top of something much deeper, much harder to shift?
So we really need to nail down what we mean by privilege here.
Yeah, definitions matter.
It's not saying a man's life isn't hard. It absolutely can be.
Crucial distinction. Yeah.
It's more like being male isn't one of the things making it harder. Not an inherent obstacle in the way it might be for a woman in the same boat.
It might even be the opposite, right?
Yeah.
Subtle advantages, tailwinds, you could say, unseen lifts.
Exactly. So, the uncomfortable question. Can your life be genuinely difficult, full of struggles, while you still benefit from that systemic male privilege?
It seems paradoxical, but I think the answer has to be yes. That's the complexity we're wrestling with.
And this ties into what Nietzsche might say about power even within suffering.
Well, perhaps. The structures granting privilege might also impose burdens. Think about the pressure on men.
The breadwinner expectation. For the whole extended family sometimes.
The emotional lockdown.
Yeah.
The shocking male suicide rates. It's a silent epidemic. Toxic masculinity takes its toll.
So are these burdens separate from privilege? Or are they like the flip side of the same patriarchal coin?
That's the core question, isn't it? Can the system benefit you in one way and absolutely crush you in another? I think it can.
I remember this story. Young guy, smaller city, huge pressure, entrance exams, his whole family counting on him.
Okay.
Meanwhile, his sisters faced different limits. Maybe couldn't go out as freely. Maybe college wasn't pushed as hard.
Different cages, perhaps?
Right. So his struggle was real, intense.
Yeah.
But did it erase male privilege? Or was his struggle also shaped by a patriarchal system that expects certain things from him while restricting his sisters differently?
That perfectly illustrates intersectionality. It's never just about gender, is it? It's caste, class, religion, location. All tangled up.
And as we talk about this, notice your own gut reaction. If you're a man listening, do you feel defensive, like your struggles are being ignored?
Or if you're a woman, maybe feeling that familiar frustration. Like, how is this even a question?
Those feelings,
Mm,
they tell us something, don't they? They point to the raw nerves this touches in 2025.
definitely. And online, it's amplified. Echo chambers everywhere.
You see MRA forums painting men as victims of a system stacked against them.
And then feminist spaces detailing endless examples of misogyny, backing it up with data and experience.
Both using anecdotes, stats, outrage. Are they describing different planets?
Yeah.
Or just different fiercely defended viewpoints of the same unequal reality?
Is the myth debate itself just a sign we can't handle the complexity, that we crave simple answers?
Maybe. Let's focus on something really concrete. Safety.
Okay.
Think about the calculations many women make after dark. Clothing, route, transport, letting someone know where they are.
That constant background processing of risk?
Most men. They just don't have that specific layer of fear based purely on their gender, do they?
Generally, no. Other dangers exist, sure, but not that specific pervasive gendered fear.
Isn't freedom from that specific fear a pretty profound privilege?
It's a fundamental difference in daily experience for many, leads to that personal reflection.
Well, let's ask you directly, men listening. When's the last time you felt held back just because you're male? Not because of money or background, but just gender.
And women. When did you last feel genuinely advantaged purely for being female? Setting aside chivalry, which is complex.
Think about how often it happens. The stakes involved. Does it feel balanced?
That internal check is important. Now, shifting gears slightly, what about the system itself, the legal arguments?
Right. You hear about divorce laws, alimony. Some men feel the system is biased against them there.
And maybe in specific cases there are valid points. But does that negate the broader picture?
Like disadvantages women face in earning power before divorce, historical property rights issues, societal pressure.
Exactly. Can a few specific legal points outweigh a lifetime of systemic, often subtle disadvantages? It's a tough comparison.
What if privilege isn't just one thing? Like not a switch, but a dial?
A spectrum, you mean?
Yeah, affected by caste, class, religion, where you live, sexuality.
So the experience of a Dalit man in rural Bihar versus an upper caste man in South Delhi, vastly different.
Does acknowledging that complexity, that intersectionality, does it weaken the idea of male privilege or actually make it more real, just
Yeah.
more varied?
I'd argue it makes it more real. It shows how power isn't simple. It operates on multiple levels.
And who shapes the stories we tell? The laws, what we consider normal.
Whose voice is dominant. Even with progress, the default setting often still feels male, doesn't it?
Is shaping the narrative the ultimate privilege?
Okay.
Controlling what stories get told, what's considered important.
It's certainly a powerful aspect. Let's try some rapid-fire questions for men listening.
Yeah, go for it.
Were you pushed towards STEM subjects more than girls you knew? Feel safer expressing anger than sadness at work? Ever worry about being called bossy? Is competence assumed?
These little things, micro privileges, do they add up? Are they myths or reality?
It's that accumulation, perhaps, which leads to the struggle with nuance. It's hard, isn't it?
It really is. I see the inequality data. I hear women's experiences of sexism. It's undeniable.
Oh.
But I also see men struggling with purpose, mental health, feeling attacked just for being men.
Can we acknowledge both? Without one canceling the other out? Is nuance even allowed in this conversation anymore?
I hope so. A friend used an analogy. Privilege is like wind at your back climbing a hill.
Ah, I like that. Explain.
You're still climbing. It's still hard work. But the wind isn't actively blowing against you because of your gender. Others might face that headwind.
That captures the invisibility, doesn't it? You might not even feel the tailwind, just the climb. But the headwind, you'd feel that.
Yeah, it resonates.
Here's a sharper thought, maybe uncomfortable. Could the very fact that men can publicly debate the existence of male privilege, often without being labeled emotional or hysterical,
Be a form of privilege itself. The privilege of being granted rationality by default.
it's something to consider. What about the workplace in 2025?
More women, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Progress. But the second shift at home still largely exists.
The maternal wall bias after having kids, promotions, mentorship, informal networks.
Are those networks still mostly boys' clubs in many places? Has the underlying game really changed, or just the players?
Requires some honest reflection, doesn't it? Men, have you benefited from that club, even unconsciously?
Women, have you felt that invisible barrier, that exclusion?
And consider male stoicism again. That pressure not to show vulnerability.
Be strong, don't cry. It's hammered in early.
Is that lack of permission to be fully human a burden of traditional masculinity tangled up with the privileges it might offer?
It feels like it. Okay, let's flip the script completely. Assume, For argument's sake, male privilege is mostly a myth now.
Okay, if it's a myth.
Then how do we explain the persistent gaps? Pay, power, land ownership, sexual violence stats. Why are they still so skewed?
Is it all down to individual choices and differences? Or does a systemic explanation just make more sense?
Some argue men get harsher sentences in court sometimes.
Again, specific instances might occur, but does that account for the biases women face before court? Being disbelieved, victim blaming.
Is the legal system truly separate from society's biases?
Right.
Seems unlikely.
Think about the marriage market pressure on young Indian men. Job, salary, status.
Huge pressure. Is that privilege? Or is it like a gilded cage? Your worth reduced to being a provider.
Mirroring traditional expectations for women, just in a different sphere. Two sides of the same restrictive coin.
Maybe. Maybe the whole privilege framework itself is the issue.
How so?
Does it flatten the huge diversity of male experiences? Does it maybe obscure how patriarchy hurts men too? Do we need new words? A different lens?
That's a really important challenge to the debate itself. Is privilege the most useful term anymore?
And could the loudest voices denying it be doing so? Not because it's false, but because admitting it feels like losing something. A defense mechanism.
Against uncomfortable self-reflection. Against acknowledging unearned advantage. Plausible.
So if you're listening and thinking, my struggles prove privilege is a myth, or all men have it easy, maybe pause. The reality in India is just messy, contradictory.
Let's try another analogy. Maybe male privilege is like playing life on easy mode, but only in certain specific areas.
Okay.
Other parts of the game might still be incredibly hard. Denying the easy settings doesn't make the hard parts disappear, but the easy settings still exist.
That makes sense. So back to the start. Is it a myth? If myth means 100% non-existent everywhere for everyone, probably not.
But if myth means it's way more complicated now, not a simple universal advantage, and men face serious struggles too, then yeah, the conversation gets richer.
It demands nuance, which is hard.
So if this conversation has got your blood boiling or made you question things, good. Share it. Talk about it.
Especially with people who disagree with you. But try to listen, not just score points.
What if the real enemy isn't men or women, but the rigid system itself? Patriarchy boxing everyone in.
Is the fight between us or against the boxes?
And psychologically, when women gain power, is it sometimes perceived by some men not as equality, but as a loss of their own assumed position? And is that feeling mistaken for oppression?
Consider the double standard. Women entering male fields are often celebrated. Men entering female fields
Often face judgment, right? Lower status associated with feminine roles. That reveals lingering bias.
But what about the boy in rural India? Facing poverty, caste issues, telling him he has male privilege? It feels off. Tone deaf, maybe?
It demands extreme context sensitivity. It doesn't necessarily invalidate the concept overall, but shows its limits and how it intersects with other huge disadvantages.
Okay, homework for everyone listening. List assumptions made about you based purely on your gender. Positive, negative.
Then think. What are the real-world effects? On jobs, safety, emotions. Does one gender consistently face harsher negative consequences from those assumptions?
We get caught in blame games. Men built it, men fix it, versus I didn't build it, why blame me?
Can we move past blame towards shared responsibility for fixing the parts that are broken, regardless of origin?
Maybe focus on specifics. A man loses custody unfairly. A woman gets denied a promotion unfairly. Tackle those biases rather than arguing endlessly about who has more abstract privilege.
The semantic war has real costs, though. Denying privilege ignores barriers women face. But insisting on a simplistic view alienates struggling men.
And legal rights aren't the whole story, are they? Lived experience matters. Invisible labor, moral policing, fear in public spaces.
That's the difference between de jure and de facto equality. The law might say one thing, reality feels different.
Think about inertia. Systems set up by men historically just keep benefiting men by default, like the world being built for right-handed people.
Left-handed people manage, but it's consistently just a bit harder, isn't it? Those small frictions add up.
So who gets the final say? Is male privilege a myth? Men, women, academics, activists.
Maybe. No one group does. It's too complex, too dependent on context.
So not a switch, not even just a dial, maybe like a whole dashboard. Socioeconomic status, caste, location, and gender is just one dial on that complex dashboard, maybe giving a slight average boost.
It feels closer to the complexity and the backlash we see now. Online misogyny, anti-feminism. What is that?
Is it privilege fading, causing panic? Or is it the old system fighting back harder as it feels threatened?
Could be both. Think about your own life. Where do gender dynamics feel unfair? Does the privilege narrative help explain it, or does it feel like a label that doesn't quite fit?
And silence, when you see sexism, is staying quiet easier if you're not the target? Is opting out itself a form of privilege?
Possibly the biggest privilege. Normalcy. Your gender being the default human experience, not having to constantly explain or justify yourself against that default.
So for men listening, maybe it's not about being villains or victims. Maybe it's about navigating this changing India, benefiting in some ways, constrained in others. It's complicated.
Which leads to a choice, really. A world that acknowledges these systemic advantages and tries to level the field, even if it means giving up some unearned edge.
There's a world that denies them, validates personal struggle, but lets inequality fester, which feels more honest, more just.
Because ultimately, you can't fix what you don't acknowledge. Denying systemic issues just ensures they continue. Ignoring the diagnosis won't cure the disease.
If the data consistently shows disparities, despite individual stories, can we honestly call the underlying advantage a myth, like denying gravity because some people can jump?
And that defensiveness we feel,
Oh.
where does it come from? Fear, guilt, feeling unseen. Understanding that reaction is key to moving forward.
It's why not all men misses the point on safety. The privilege isn't just not being a threat. It's not living with the constant fear generated by the statistical threat.
Maybe we should focus less on the word privilege and more on the actions. Identify specific inequalities, figure out their roots, including how patriarchy harms men, and fix them, regardless of the label.
Yeah. I don't have a simple answer. There's real pain on all sides. Denying men's struggles is wrong. Denying systemic advantage feels equally wrong. It's conditional, contextual, uncomfortable.
We all inherit these biases. Acknowledging potential advantage isn't personal blame. It's recognizing the system and deciding how to respond.
Back to the body swap. The nature of the struggle is different. That's the key insight, maybe. Empathy for that difference.
You didn't build historical patriarchy. You might benefit from its legacy. The choice now is how you use any advantage, earned or unearned.
So sit with the discomfort this conversation might have caused. Why does it hit a nerve? That's where the real work starts.
And listen. Truly listen to experiences different from your own. Not to argue, just to understand.
So, is male privilege a myth? Maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe it should be. How do we dismantle all unearned advantages, all inherited burdens for everyone, even when it's hard? Even when it means looking unflinchingly at ourselves?
How do we dismantle all systems of unearned advantage and inherited burdens for everyone's sake, even when it means confronting our own reflection in the wreckage?